We often think of ourselves as standing at the pinnacle of evolution. But DNA tells a different story. Humans are the result of billions of years of life's experiment. So who are we? And where did that journey begin? There was a moment in Earth's history when everything was rewritten in just a matter of hours. Before that, this planet belonged to creatures that had dominated it for approximately 165 million years, the dinosaurs. In that world, mammals were merely small creatures, living hidden in the shadows. Then, around 66 million years ago, a colossal celestial object known as Chicxulub slammed into Earth, in what is now the Yucatan Peninsula. This was not a single event, but a chain reaction on a planetary scale. The consequence was that approximately 75% of all species on Earth disappeared. The entire group of non-avian dinosaurs was wiped out. Ecosystems that had remained stable for tens of millions of years were completely shattered. But the most important thing was the void that followed. When the rulers vanished, vast ecological space opened up. The small creatures that had long been constrained mammals began entering an evolutionary experiment unlike anything before. Over the tens of millions of years that followed, mammals gradually came to occupy a wide range of habitats. One branch of them developed the ability to climb, live in trees, and eventually acquire crucial traits: forward-facing eyes, stereoscopic vision that allowed precise judgment of distance, and hands with opposable thumbs capable of grasping. These became the earliest foundations of the primates, the group of animals that would eventually lead to humans. Fossil evidence and modern ecological models point to one clear conclusion. Evolution does not follow a predetermined plan. It depends on unpredictable events and moments that alter the entire direction of life. From this perspective, the asteroid was a cosmic filter, removing a world that had dominated for too long and inadvertently clearing the way for another. Without it, the history of life might have been entirely different, and the concept of humanity may never have existed. And what is truly haunting is not the asteroid's destructive power, but the entire journey that ultimately led to human intelligence. Around 60 to 55 million years ago, after the world had just emerged from the aftermath of the mass extinction, a small branch of life began to appear, the first primates. They possessed an advantage that few other creatures had at that time: the ability to live in trees. At the same time, their hands were changing as well. Opposable thumbs became more developed, allowing precise gripping force between the thumb and the other fingers. What seemed simple became the foundation for every complex behavior that followed, from grasping branches and picking fruit to using tools. A small gesture on an ancient tree branch laid the first stone for the future ability to write, build machines, and construct cities. But evolution was not occurring only in the body. It was also unfolding quietly within the brain. Life in the trees forced primates to process enormous amounts of information. Which branch was strong enough? Which root was safe? Where food could be found? And most importantly, which members of the group could be trusted? Studies of modern primates reveal an important common pattern. The more complex a species' social life is, the more developed its brain tends to be. This is known in evolutionary biology as the social intelligence hypothesis. What is remarkable is that all the abilities modern humans take pride in, from planning and building social systems to creating language, can be traced back to very specific pressures. Not falling from a branch, not being left behind by the group, and not losing access to food within the complexity of a dense forest environment. Therefore, the human brain is not a perfect design in the modern sense. It is the product of millions of years of layered adaptations, sculpted by small but repeated risks within ancient forests. And within those canopies, a unique form of intelligence began to emerge. An intelligence capable of transcending the very environment that created it. And from that point forward, an entirely new evolutionary path began to unfold. There is a very common misconception. We often think intelligence was the starting point. But the fossil record tells a completely different story. Intelligence was not what appeared first. It was the final result of survival pressures that unfolded over millions of years. Around 7 to 5 million years ago, East Africa underwent a major climatic transformation. Dense forests were gradually replaced by expanding grasslands. In the forests, animals could hide, climb, and move between tree canopies. But on the grasslands, there was no shelter, no safe escape route. Every movement could be detected from a distance. Within this context, the first human-like creatures appeared. Sahelanthropus, Orion, and especially Ardipithecus ramidus, a species that lived approximately 4.4 million years ago. Standing only about 1.2 meters tall and weighing between 36 and 50 kilograms, they were not the rulers of their environment. Yet they possessed a trait that would become a turning point: the ability to stand and move on two legs. What is remarkable is that upright posture appeared before the human brain began increasing significantly in size. Modern scientific hypotheses suggest that bipedal walking provided several specific advantages. By standing upright, the body reduced the amount of surface area directly exposed to sunlight, helping regulate temperature more efficiently in the hot grassland environment. As time continued to pass, an important figure emerged in the evolutionary record: Australopithecus afarensis, known through the famous fossil Lucy. Alongside it, many other species also appeared, existed in parallel, and then vanished without leaving descendants. Australopithecus africanus, Paranthropus, Kenyanthropus. All were different experiments of nature, each carrying its own solution to the same survival challenge. Then, sometime between approximately 2.4 and 1.4 million years ago, a new branch began to emerge, Homo habilis. This marked a clear turning point. For the first time in evolutionary history, a species began using stone tools systematically, the Oldowan culture. More importantly, this was the first time in the history of life on Earth that a species was not merely adapting to its environment, but was beginning to change the environment around it. There was no plan, no goal. Only life experimenting, eliminating, and continuing to push the boundaries of its own possibilities. In the history of evolution, there are fossils that do more than provide data. They completely change the way humans understand themselves. Lucy is one of them. When the skeleton of Australopithecus afarensis was discovered in Ethiopia in 1974, it was not merely an archaeological discovery. Lived approximately 3.2 million years ago. Her body stood just over 1 meter tall, with a brain measuring roughly 400 to 500 cubic centimeters, close to that of a modern chimpanzee. But what drew attention was not her size. It was the unusual combination of two traits: the ability to walk upright on two legs and a body structure that still carried traces of a climbing lifestyle. For decades, people believed that human evolution resembled a straight path, from ancient apes to primitive humans and eventually modern Homo sapiens. But Lucy shattered that model. Fossilized bones, together with hundreds of later discoveries, revealed a far more complicated reality. Evolution is not a single stream, but a continuously branching network in which multiple species coexist, compete, and disappear in parallel. Some species developed powerful jaws for crushing tough vegetation. Others adapted to arid environments. Some retained body structures more similar to those of primates. We are one of the rare results that remain. When scientists study Lucy, they recognize something even more important than appearance: a behavioral transition. Although her brain remained small, the structure of her pelvis and legs suggests that upright walking had already become relatively stable. Standing upright was a process that unfolded over millions of years, long before intelligence began expanding dramatically. This was one of the most important turning points in biological history, because it demonstrates that evolution did not prioritize intelligence immediately. It prioritized survival within a changing environment. Species that could not adapt quickly enough disappeared. Species that adapted in different ways diverged into multiple parallel evolutionary paths. Under those pressures, some branches developed stronger bodies to cope with harsh conditions, while others retained smaller and more agile forms for flexible movement. Lucy is not merely a fossil. She is a milestone within a vast network where evolution does not select the best, but simply preserves what remains suited to an ever-changing world. And from within that very network, a new turning point was gradually beginning to emerge. For most of the history of life, every organism followed a silent rule: adapt in order to survive. They were constrained by climate, food availability, predators, and natural changes beyond their control. But between approximately 2.4 and 1.4 million years ago, a small branch of the human family broke that rule, not through physical strength, but through a simple yet revolutionary act: picking up a stone and turning it into a tool. That species was called Homo habilis. Compared to the species that came before, there was nothing particularly extraordinary about their bodies. Their brains measured only about 600 to 700 cubic centimeters. Their stature was small, and they remained heavily dependent on the natural environment. Yet in their hands appeared something entirely new in evolutionary history: Oldowan stone tools, sharpened stone flakes used to cut meat, slice through hide, and break bones. This was not merely a small behavioral change. At its core, it was a profound biological turning point. For the first time, an animal species was no longer using only its body to interact with the world, but was using an external object to extend its ability to survive. These crude tools opened access to a source of energy that had previously remained largely untapped: meat and bone marrow from animal carcasses. When Homo habilis began using stones to break bones, they gained access to a far richer source of calories than a diet based solely on plants. In this case, the brain of Homo habilis gradually expanded to approximately 600 to 700 cubic centimeters, representing an important leap beyond earlier ancestors. But the most important change was not brain size itself. It was the emergence of a new evolutionary feedback loop. For the first time in the history of life, tools were not merely serving survival. They were beginning to reshape the very brain of the creature that created them. A simple yet symbolic example illustrates this shift. Rather than consuming only the soft tissues of animal carcasses, Homo habilis could use stones to crack open the femur bones of large animals and access the marrow inside, a rich source of energy-dense fat that many other predators could not easily exploit. More importantly, tool use marked the emergence of an evolutionary psychological change: the ability to imagine the function of an object. A stone was no longer just a stone. It could become a blade, a hammering tool, or a means of unlocking resources. This was the first step toward abstract thought in human history. As the number of tools increased, traces of them appeared across the landscape. Bones were split apart, animal carcasses were processed differently, and ecosystems began to feel the influence of a single species' behavior. Yet when viewed across the entirety of history, this was the beginning of a new era. An era in which organisms did not merely live within the natural world, but began restructuring it through deliberate action. And from those crudely shaped stones, another evolutionary threshold was gradually being prepared. Throughout the entire history of evolution, there have been technologies that were not invented in a single moment, but emerged from natural phenomena. Fire is one of them, the way humans came to control it. And that very moment marked the transition from a species living within nature to a species beginning to direct nature itself. Around 1.9 million years ago, Homo erectus appeared in the fossil record. This was a species that endured for more than 1.5 million years, a span of time so vast that it far exceeds the entire history of modern civilization. Archaeological evidence suggests that the use of fire may have first appeared as early as 1 million years ago, and gradually became more common among ancient human groups. At first, fire was neither a manufacturing tool nor a technology. It was a natural phenomenon, wildfires sparked by lightning, volcanic activity, or climatic events. But rather than avoiding it like other species, Homo erectus learned to preserve it, maintain it, and eventually control it. Raw meat, tough roots, and hard-to-digest tubers all became more accessible when cooked. This process not only softened food, but also broke down protein structures and eliminated many pathogens. As a result, the body spent less energy on digestion while absorbing more nutrients. As food became more energy-rich and easier to digest, the body could invest more resources into the brain. A larger brain, in turn, supported better learning abilities, improving the use of fire, hunting skills, and cooperation. And this cycle continued to amplify itself over hundreds of thousands of years. Another transformative development was the change in social rhythms. Fire was not only for cooking, it extended the hours of wakefulness each day. Instead of retreating into darkness, groups of Homo erectus could gather around the light, exchange behaviors, observe one another, and maintain social interactions for longer periods. Imagine a group of ancient humans sitting around a fire in the middle of the savannah, while darkness envelops everything beyond its glow and predators continue to lurk outside. With fire, humans could survive in colder climates where long-term habitation had previously been impossible. This paved the way for future migrations out of Africa, as ancient human groups began expanding their range across increasingly diverse environments. Although the brain of Homo erectus accounted for only about 2% of body weight, it consumed nearly 20% of the body's energy. Fire did not merely change the way humans ate. It changed the way humans existed. This was the first time a living organism was no longer completely dependent on external conditions, but began reshaping those conditions according to its own needs. And when a species can control energy, control food, and control its environment at a fundamental level, a new evolutionary threshold begins to emerge. A threshold where biology is no longer the only limitation. For a very long time, modern humans believed that we were the only remaining human species, the final pinnacle of a linear evolutionary process. But in the 21st century, a quiet revolution in biology completely shattered that picture. Not through new fossils, but through something far smaller, ancient DNA. Modern genetic data confirmed that around 40,000 years ago, the world was not inhabited solely by Homo sapiens. Living alongside us were Neanderthals in Europe and Western Asia, Denisovans in Asia, and other mysterious branches such as Homo floresiensis in Indonesia and Homo naledi in Africa. These were fully human species, existing simultaneously within the same geological period. Even more surprising is that we were not completely separate from them. Modern DNA analyses show that most people outside Africa still carry approximately 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA. Some populations in Oceania even carry additional traces of Denisovan ancestry. This means that in the distant past, multiple human species not only coexisted, but also interbred and exchanged genes. One specific example is that Neanderthal genes in modern humans are associated with adaptation to cold climates and aspects of the immune system. This suggests that encounters between ancient human species were not merely moments of contact, but events that left biological signatures lasting to the present day. This creates a profound paradox. Our sense of uniqueness is actually only a brief moment within a history spanning millions of years. But why is Homo sapiens the only one left? The answer does not lie in physical strength. Neanderthals, for example, possessed more robust bodies, were better adapted to harsh, cold environments, and were capable of using tools of comparable complexity. The crucial difference appears to have been in the organization of society and the processing of information. Homo sapiens developed broader social networks that enabled cooperation among unrelated groups. Language became more flexible, serving not only direct communication, but also the transmission of abstract ideas. Knowledge was no longer confined to individuals or small groups, but began accumulating across generations. A clear example can be seen in the spread of technology. While an ancient human group might learn how to make a tool within a community of only a few dozen individuals, Homo sapiens possessed the ability to spread that knowledge across thousands of people over vast geographic distances. Added to this was an extraordinary capacity for adaptability. Rather than depending on a specific environment, Homo sapiens could alter behavior, tools, and survival strategies to fit a wide variety of conditions. This leads to a profound reversal in perspective. Homo sapiens is not the endpoint of human evolution, but the only surviving branch remaining after a long process of diversification followed by gradual contraction. There is a familiar assumption in evolutionary history. The species that survives until the end must be the strongest. But when we examine the fossil record and genetic evidence, that assumption begins to fall apart. Homo sapiens were not the strongest. We are the last surviving species in a competition where physical strength was not the deciding factor. Between approximately 400,000 and 40,000 years ago, Earth was home to more than one human species. Evidence from fossils and ancient DNA indicates that at least several Homo species coexisted. Neanderthals in Europe and Western Asia, Denisovans in Asia, Homo floresiensis in Indonesia, and possibly even Homo naledi in South Africa. This has been confirmed clearly through ancient DNA research conducted during the 2010s and 2020s, when the genomes of Neanderthals and Denisovans were successfully decoded. They had more robust bodies, thicker bones, and were better adapted to the harsh cold climates of Ice Age Europe. Archaeological evidence also indicates that they produced sophisticated stone tools associated with the Mousterian culture, used fire, and showed signs of caring for the sick and elderly within their communities. If we evaluate individuals alone, Neanderthals may even appear superior to Homo sapiens in many aspects of physical survival. So why did they disappear? The answer does not lie in physical strength, but in social structure and the ability to accumulate information. Homo sapiens developed broader social networks. Their language was not used solely for communication, but also for transmitting complex information, hunting plans, manufacturing knowledge, and even stories and symbols. Meanwhile, Neanderthals appear to have lived in smaller, more isolated groups. This limited the speed at which knowledge could spread. And innovation could disappear along with a single group rather than spreading across an entire continent. A simple example illustrates the difference. If one group developed a more effective hunting technique, Homo sapiens could spread that knowledge to thousands of others throughout a social network. Genetic evidence also reveals another important truth. We did not completely replace the other human species. Modern humans outside Africa carry approximately 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA, and some populations in the Asia-Pacific region carry additional Denisovan DNA. This means that interbreeding occurred between different human species. Rather than a simple process of elimination, human history was a far more complex web of interaction. Nevertheless, the survival of Homo sapiens ultimately led to a clear outcome. Only we remain because we were more flexible in the way we organized society and processed information. If strength does not determine who survives, then what truly defines a human being? Between approximately 70,000 and 50,000 years ago, Homo sapiens began expanding out of Africa in a major wave of migration, spreading across Asia, Europe, Australia, and eventually the Americas. Archaeological evidence from this period reveals the widespread appearance of cave art, jewelry, complex tools, and signs of intentional burial rituals. A drawing on stone was no longer just a drawing. It became collective memory. A burial ritual was no longer merely an action performed upon the dead. It became a story about existence beyond death. Homo sapiens developed the ability to create and believe in entities that did not exist in nature, yet existed within the collective mind. Over time, those entities became the foundations of the modern world. Money, nations, religions, laws, corporations. None of these are tangible objects like stone or water. Yet millions, even billions of people believe in them. And because of that, they become real in social behavior. What is remarkable is that other human species that once existed, such as Neanderthals and Denisovans, also possessed intelligence, tools, and perhaps even language to some degree. But current evidence suggests that they did not develop symbolic systems of comparable complexity on the scale achieved by Homo sapiens. But a group of Homo sapiens could become a collective intelligence greater than the sum of its individual members through shared imagined agreements. Looking back, this reveals an evolutionary paradox. Humans did not dominate because they were stronger, but because they could synchronize belief. An invisible system, yet powerful enough to reshape the behavior of an entire planet. And from this point forward, the question was no longer, who are we within nature, but rather, what have we become once we gained the ability to create reality through belief? From primitive organisms to modern civilization, this entire history of survival has been recorded in fossils, encoded within DNA, and preserved in the very structure of our bodies today. Understanding our origins is the only way to accurately locate humanity's place within this planet's billions of years-long history of life. A species granted consciousness by the universe to reflect upon itself. Thank you for staying with WUFO Space until the very end of this journey through the vast universe. If you found this video interesting and insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to WUFO Space so you won't miss our next cosmic adventures. Your support means the world to us and fuels our passion to keep exploring the wonders beyond.